Woohoo! All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I'm here with Melissa Chanselle-Hary, and we are very excited to be diving into the topic of death and how getting more comfortable with death can actually help us live a more purposeful and intentional life. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome you, Melissa, to this group. And if you could just share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Melissa Chanselle-Hary. I'm based in Northern Nevada, and I am a sex and death doula. So I like to guide people through a number of things. So specific to being a death doula, we do death doula support end-of-life planning, comprehensive end-of-life planning. So sometimes that's having a conversation when you're young and healthy to talk about sort of what you're thinking for your death, your funeral, what things you have to have in place in your life to reach a point that you could let go and sort of release into the next phase with some amount of ease or peace. We also help out, doulas also do a lot of work with families who are actively experiencing death or in a state of palliative care. So if there's a terminal diagnosis and there are a couple of years or it's not clear how much time there is, but there is time to do some amount of work, doulas support by being present with the family, sort of lighthouse work, cooking. Sometimes it's about facilitating difficult conversations, and really also just broadening the expectations for what the end can look like. And really the death doula is there to support the client. So if the client is the person who's dying or a family member of the person who's dying, it's really about meeting them where they're at and just offering a lot of love and a lot of light. Additionally, some of the stuff that I focus on is also sex and sex work in the sense of expanding our horizons within our intimacy and how we define our own sexuality. So I'm in the process of becoming an erotic blueprint coach with Jaya. That's seen, if anyone's seen Group, the Love, Sex, and Group on Netflix, you can see Jaya and all of the magic there. And so I'm really excited because that'll be something that I'm formally certified in at the end of the year. So I focus on those two things. We're going to leave the taxes for somebody else. And I find that there's a pretty interesting intersection when we consider sex and death and how that adds to us feeling a little bit more alive every day.
Oh, so interesting. I would love to know just how you got interested in becoming a death doula. And your audio is a little bit quiet. So if you could just maybe project a little bit more, it might be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. Is this any better?
Yes.
As a theater kid, I'm often told I'm talking too loudly. So this is great. I can definitely speak up. So death work, I think, often finds people. I have unintentionally or been very proud or just been able to hold space for people at times of death. And so it happened more than once. And I realized I was playing a critical role for people that I care about in my family and in my life, and felt like I was uniquely suited to it. I've often gotten the response that I'm really intense, which is 100% true. And so, having been in the corporate world, having been in local government, finding a place that all of my intensity was exactly where it needed to be, because I'm just uniquely comfortable in some of the grittier, darker spaces. And I found Going with Grace, which is a program hosted by this amazing woman. Her name is Doula Arthur. So there's no formal certification for being a death doula, but I am NEDA proficient. So NEDA is the National End of Life Doula Association. They're the only governing body in the United States right now. So I am NEDA proficient. And within that, I found an amazing community of people who are seekers and people who are seeking to share love and change the narrative around death, and also talk about how we can do it differently. Because I think death is just one of many things we as a society could do differently. And so it's just another pathway into, I think, dreaming up and creating and designing a different kind of world.
Wow. I love this story of how you got into the work and just having it be close to you. And I can attest to Melissa's capacity to hold space for the grittier and the more uncomfortable conversations. You are just so steadfast and strong and just, as you said, an intense presence, but it's a compassionate and love-filled presence. So it's perfect for you. I'm so happy you have come to this and, in the life journey. So let's dive into our conversation today. And we're thinking about how getting intimate with death helps us live a more fulfilling life. So I'd love to hear, I know our audience would love to hear your take on that question. How can we get more joy or purpose or life fulfilling when we are more comfortable with the concept or the process of death? So I'll let you share.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a super important question. I think when we contemplate death, when we think about, because number one, we cannot control it. We can't control how we go, when we go, and depending on the circumstances, sort of what happens for the people around us and for ourselves. So it really is a true contemplation of surrender when you start to think about death. I would also highlight that part of my curiosity in this field might be a little bit because I want to be a control freak. And so I feel like if I'm super prepared, then it will be fine. And I can make sure it goes, I can sort of strong arm it into what I want it to be. And I really have learned over the course of my own journey, there's only so much you can do. And at some point you have to let go. And so if we think about one day there will be an end, and one day I won't have control. And I often think of myself in this liminal space of like, if I'm right at the precipice, if I'm right at the threshold of crossing over, will I be able to let go? And right now there are things that I find myself saying, no, like I cannot let go yet. And so when I just contemplate that and think, what would allow me to let go? What would allow me to sort of breathe in and release? Then we work backwards. We sort of reverse engineer where it is we want to go by working backwards to be like, where am I right now? So for myself, at one point in my life, I was not in a career that was actually serving me, and my best gifts weren't being used. And I was like, how do I do that? And you just start somewhere. And I think when we start to think about, what do I have in order? So some people might have a will, you might have a plan, you might have someone in your life who knows what you want, but you also might sit and realize nobody knows what I want. Like personally, I do not want funeral flowers, and I don't want hymns or organ music. That's not the music I want. I want a celebration of life. I know that I want people to tell a lot of ridiculous stories about how I lived life. That's what my hope is, but nobody knows that unless I tell them. Right. And then also when I think about that, what stories am I expecting to tell? Because right now, or in a different part of my life, I was in a different space where I was like, this is not a life I want someone telling stories about. This, I'm not living. And so ever since I've been on this journey, it's like I'm living and I feel more alive. And I've had to hold death more closely because I'm working with patients who are in hospice. I'm working with people who are dying. I'm working with people who are trying to set themselves up and their families. Right. Something that I think is super important is love your people till the end. And that means having a little bit of a plan, like what do you want them to do? Because leaving people in a position to not know what you want, to not know how to care for you and love you to the end, it's a mutual experience. They want to love you to the end and you can love them to the end. And part of the way of doing that is just talking about it. An example I have is yesterday, I was with my family in the kitchen and a song came on and I was like, Maxwell, that's my son. I was like, Max, this song has to play at my funeral. I need this song to be played at my funeral. And that seems like a weird thing to say, but as the more you talk about it and the more you normalize it, the more people come to know, and they just know, and they know what to expect, and it makes it a little less scary. Right. Because if we don't talk about it, if we don't actually name what's going to happen, then we all arrive at this critical moment where everyone's holding on and tense and not breathing deeply and not being present, just fighting the thing that's inevitable. And there's I think, a more gentle way to get there. And so when we are living in a way that says, I want to be able to let go, I want to be able to go knowing I did the best I could with what I had, then it leads me to go, well, then what am I doing today? Right? So I rested today. I did my yoga. I'm going to make sure I eat. I'm going to journal. I'm going to pursue some of my other goals, whatever it looks like. But it's allowing me, just by holding this little thought, and not in an anxious way, not like, oh God, I'm going to die any moment. Right. Right now. But in a moment of like, since I don't know when, what would the best day today look like? Like, what would the best version of myself, like, what would it look like today? and it just slowly starts to spread out into everything. And I can't explain it. For myself, it's like the trees are more beautiful.
Yeah.
The air is brighter. I see a friend I haven't seen in a while, and I just think, I'm so glad to see you. Hi. Like, there's just more life to be had. And I think that comes with the opposition of holding death closely.
I love that. And it's so interesting because, excuse me, you are getting, by bringing this into your daily practice, maybe it's something that you weave in if you're a journaler, something that you weave into a daily journal. You're really doing two things at once. You are getting more comfortable with the concept of death by the reminder that everything, our lives are fleeting. This is a temporary thing. Everything can go quickly. And by doing so, it makes that day, that moment, so much more powerful. And we can be so much more mindful and thoughtful about how we live. And I think I would say 99% of us are just cruising around, like not at all thinking about that. Right?
Yep. I would totally agree. I was one of them. I mean, I think that's the thing, is just realizing, oh, and it's not a shame spiral. It's not a criticism. It's just more about, oh, wow, would this be what I would want it to look like if I were literally crossing over in 5 minutes? Nope, I sure would not. So what do I want to do about that?
Right. And it doesn't have to be like major big things happening, but small changes, like small little daily awarenesses or gratitude that can help start to like shift and make your life feel better. Right.
Absolutely. I think that's actually one of the most freeing things about it, is that it's not about some huge sweeping change and overhaul of your life. It might be after years of incremental practice, but in the now and in the moment, it's really small, and it's just about like sort of lighting that tiny little flame and letting it go until it's time to move on.
What would you say are some of the obstacles to living that more intentional life? Like in the context of being a death doula, what would you say are some of the obstacles for people that are maybe struggling to like feel that purpose or that intentional life?
You know, I think it's what it is in a lot of cases, but fear. Because fear of dying is it's the most universal, typically, not the unknown, fear of the unknown, and the fear of dying. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have never died before, so I don't know what it's like. I don't know what happens. And so when there's fear, typically it's the fear of failing at something or the fear of losing control. And I think when you start to contemplate both of those things a little bit, so we'll pause on failure and skip to losing control.
Sure.
Well, I know now I'm going to lose control. Like, I understand it. So if I let go of that a little bit, like, what happens? I don't know. I don't know, but not knowing that thing cannot stop me today from feeling more alive. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. I don't want to let that stop me.
Right.
The fear of failure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of things that can be said. Part of it's how you define failure, but it's like the expectations of ourselves or the expectations on us from other people. And I think when you start to unpack some of that, because quite frankly, if you start to contemplate how you want the end of your life to look and what you want to be in place when it's time for you to go, you have to address the expectations that you have for yourself or that others have of you. Yeah. And there's work to be done to really let go and decide, do I want this because I want it, or do I want this because I've been told that I'm supposed to want it, or because my family expects me to behave a certain way or leave a certain thing behind.
Right.
And it's really just about getting brave enough to ask some of the questions and then sitting quietly with ourselves to answer them.
Yeah. And I think that question is something that we can apply every day. It's like, do I want this for me or do I want this for someone else? And just to like sit with that. Whenever we're making a decision, if it's a new job opportunity or a vacation that you were asked to go on or something, I'm just thinking of random things, but it's like, how do you get in tune with yourself to kind of do that check of who am I making this decision for? And are you going to be at peace with that?
Yeah. When it's time, when I look back, will this really have mattered? Will this, like, if you're holding on to something, it's like, is this worth, like, pardon the pun, but am I going to die on this hill? I don't know. Are you? Because is it worth it? Is that what you want to remember as you're moving on, transitioning, exiting, however you want to say it?
Yeah.
it's going to be like, was this worth it? And there will be times where something is worth it, and you'll know. And finding that inner knowing is like really the magic.
Yeah. So just wanted to share this because it popped in. My husband has been practicing Buddhism for over 20 years, and Buddhism is really like the nature of your mind, and also like the biggest emphasis is on death. It's considered the crowning jewel of life is death, and it's preparing your entire life for the moment of death to be this beautiful transition. Like, this is the moment we've been working up to. And it just really struck me because he has been planning his death. Like, he has been planning his death for the last, I don't know, maybe for a very long time. I don't want to put a number because I don't know for sure. But he's been articulating it and saying it. And it's often met with, shock and you're crazy. Like, you're a wacko. But he's like, I want to die by the ocean. I don't want to be here. So we've been planning, like, he wants to die in his bed looking out at the ocean, period. Like, that's where he wants to be. And I think I admire him for that, for being able to be so clear. Like, he is wishing this up. He's embodying, he envisions it every day. And it's not like I'm wishing up this death to happen tomorrow. It's like he sees himself as an old man looking out at the beach, and it's like beautiful, but it's so radical. It's so radical when people hear that. They're like, what? You're crazy. I'm like, I think it's amazing that he's so intentional about it. So
I totally agree. I mean, I think more of us should spend time seeing that, picturing it, living it, manifesting it. And I think what I love about, what you're saying about your partner's intention and goal is that, it frees so much of what's possible. Like, it opens up, it genuinely expands what's possible. I think I was raised in a small Southern town where you went to the same funeral home that everybody went to, and there was a very prescribed way that you were supposed to die. And it just doesn't leave room, I think, for us to think of it differently. And if that soothes you, if that is what you want, that's beautiful. That's absolutely okay. Like, there's no wrong way to die. Outside of, if it's not your choice and that kind of thing, like, that is a different situation. But when we talk about a situation where we are present with our death, there's no wrong way to do it. But also, what else is possible? Do you want to be by the ocean? Do you want to die at home? And do you want your family to take the time to be with you and bathe your body and surround you with flowers? Like, a funeral can look really different. And for those of us in the death positive movement, really, we're trying to give people their flowers before they go. So some trends that exist are like living funerals. So the person comes in, everybody's there, and there's a little program of events of like sharing memories, telling stories, saying things that you've always wanted to say. And when I think of that, it's so like beautiful and warm and healing. And the idea of saying it before someone's gone, or saying something I've been holding on to. Creating that path so that maybe there is this event, and then we move into whatever is present, whatever's happening. Like, if you're ill, or if you don't know and you're like, well, I don't know, I'm 85, let's have this party. Who knows how long I'll be here? You can do that.
Right.
You could do it now. I could do it now at 42 if I wanted. So just really expanding what it means, because death is not just one thing. And I think when we also think about that, and when we think, well, what's possible there? What's possible before we go?
Yeah. Oh, I love just that perspective shift. It doesn't have to be that prescribed sequence of how we have been raised. Media and culture and society has just kind of programmed the death, the death program. But it's awesome to hear just how the different ways that people are starting to expand that concept and that process. So thinking about like how tangible ways that we can apply this familiarity or the concept of death to our lives. So what can someone do today, tomorrow, or over the next few weeks to live more on purpose in the context of death and dying?
Yeah, I think it's about taking the time to think, like just to sit quietly with yourself. So just ask yourself the question. I mean, I'm a compassionate disruptor. My favorite way of disrupting is to ask the questions. And so if it's like, if I could do anything with my funeral, if I could do anything like what does an ideal death look like? What does that look like? What does it sound like? Just sitting with that and letting the thoughts come. And if nothing comes, nothing comes. But, it might come, hours, weeks, days later. Because also once those things start to if things come to you and maybe perhaps something you want or something you're interested in feels out of reach or radical for you to mention to your family, that's like, there's no way I can ask for this. No one is going to march my ashes to Lake Ellen Wilson in Glacier National Park and put me, in the ground. No one is going to do that. Well, maybe, but you don't know until you start to think about it, and you don't know what you want until you start to contemplate it. So the reason this is also important is that if we're in a place of fear of rejection or about what we might be risking or the expectations that others or we have of ourselves, once you confront this, then you have the choice of, do I choose to accept this or do I want to let it go and just do what I'm supposed to do or do what's expected of me? And I think that intersection is really one of the most healing. And when you're actually at that space, it's when you start to make choices that help you feel more alive every day. So sitting with yourself and just thinking about it, knowing what your tethers are, and in like sex doula work and in the work of the erotic blueprints, there's something we talk about. We talk a lot about feeding ourselves. So it's like, how do you feed yourself? And what does it mean to feel good, or the phrase that we often use is pleasure first? Like in this moment, how do I make myself 2% more comfortable, 5% more comfortable? Maybe I might shift this chair, or I'm going to grab a blanket and have it on my lap because I'm just a little chilly. But those tiny, tiny little moments that you choose to just feel a little more comfortable, that thing makes you feel just a little more alive. And then when you do that, it just starts to grow and it increases. And then lo and behold, you're like, I am buying this lotion. I know it's $2 more, but I want it and it makes me feel good. Or I am going to prioritize yoga, or I'm going to eat a certain way, or I'm going to spend time with my family, or I'm going to let go of working extra so that I can go do things that feed me, and then find a ratio or an equation for my day that I can lay down as I'm falling asleep and like, yeah, if I don't wake up tomorrow, today was what I wanted it to be. So tethers, so finding the things, so people, places, interests that feed you. Pleasure first, how do you make something just a little bit more comfortable? And just sit with yourself to really think about this. Those are the 3 things that you can do right now, today. And it doesn't have to be long. You can sit with yourself for 5 minutes before you get out of bed or before you fall asleep. It does not have to be a Herculean amount of time or effort to make gains.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I love the practical application. And I saw a chat come in, or a comment come in. Says I was a hospice nurse, and so I have a comfort level talking about death and dying. Yay to the hospice nurse. Thank you for being here. I agree that it is so important to talk about it and discuss with each other before it's the elephant in the room. I totally agree with this too. I've been in I've had my family experiences on that side of things where death wasn't talked about, and it became very uncomfortable and shocking. And it can so smooth the path if it's something that's discussed beforehand. And this, like, start today. It's like noticing those little, the little deaths in life as a way to get more comfortable. Like when I started, well, this is before we went live. I haven't been drinking out of this. But when I started an hour ago, this mug was full of coffee and it's gone now. So this is a little death. This is a way to see, like, just an hour ago, this was full and now it's gone. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. The day is a mini death. The end of this live is going to be a mini death. So just starting to recognize, like, everything is fleeting. Everything is fleeting. Even a diamond is going to erode. The strongest thing is still, everything is always changing. So if we can start to focus on that, we become more grateful, more appreciative of those little things and those little moments. So it is also a practice of mindfulness too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love the idea of just recognizing the little deaths that happen, in the cycles or whatever it is that you see. Like, it is the natural cycle for our bodies to return to source, God, heaven, whatever it is that you feel or know and believe that we are headed to. But there's a natural cycle. Everything dies. I mean, even right now, I don't know where people are regionally or what the weather's like, but this is a great time to take a walk outside and just notice what's alive, what's dead, what's in transition.
Mm-hmm.
We're all always in some kind of transition. So just noting it is like, the awareness is the first step. And then how it occurs to you, it will occur to you more. It's just like, oh, that's over. That was great. Or, oh, we had such a nice walk and now it's over. And amazing.
Yeah.
I took a walk, I took time. Yeah. And I think even the language, like finding it, just being like, what is that? That was great. And I have seen how in the moments, there's no wrong way to die. And so some people are actively dying and still can't say the words, still can't admit to their family that they're in the process of transitioning. And that's how they're going. But I can say that for the people who have just started to talk about it, it is their reality, and it makes it easier for the family to not feel caught up in, well, how do I take care of you, and is this okay, and everything's a mess, or there's so many feelings that come up in death that just the little pieces and starting to talk about it. So for anyone who's like, this is an elephant in the room, yes, it is, but it doesn't have to be. And little things like, man, when I die, I'd like to be cremated, or I'd like aquamation, or human composting is becoming a thing. I want to go back. I want to go in a mushroom soup. There are so many options.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm a ginkgo tree in my will, everybody.
I love this. I love this. And that's the thing. There's so many beautiful things that can be done. And so I think when we just start to mention it, it is far off. We don't know when, but here's this little detailer. I hate lilies. Please, no lilies. I do not want any lilies. Like whatever it is, just starting to say those little things. And if you start to keep a little note and start to journal this for yourself, it just becomes part of the norm, and just the true recognition of, here we go. This has arrived. This is its cycle, and now it's gone. So you're totally, absolutely on to the right thing when we say, like, how do we mark the small, tiny, incremental little daily deaths that we have, and how do we normalize it? I love that.
Awesome. And I just have, sorry, I'm going to share one more thing.
Please. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I shared this in a previous chat I had with a therapist, but one of the exercises we were talking about for finding purpose in our lives was to do the like a journal prompt, but imagining your own funeral and imagining what people are saying. What do you want your eulogy to be, if you decide to go the funeral route? But just a way to kind of get clear on your values right now. And this is an opportunity, once you've gone through that practice of journaling or meditating on what you imagine, like your friends, your coworkers, your peers, the people in your life saying about you, then it can be inspiring. It's like an inspiration for us to live in that way and embody that today. Like in the very next moment is your opportunity. So I think it's a really, really brilliant practice and prompt to get us into living intentionally now, in the context, again, in the reference of the end or the transition.
I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think that concludes our time now. We're just about a half an hour. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I see there's a few people watching. If you have any questions for Melissa, you can pop them in the chat, or myself. And I will give you the opportunity, Melissa, too, to share if there's a way that people could get in touch with you. Where are you in the world of social or email or websites?
Yes, my tenuous relationship with social media. I go back and forth between being like, I'm not doing it that way, and then, no, I'm going to. No, I'm not. But you can find me, sacredtransits.com. Also, if you want to email me, it's sojourn, SOJOURN, at sacredtransits.com. And my Instagram is also at Sacred Transits, and there will be a TikTok soon, but not there yet.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And if anybody has questions, again, please feel free to add it into the comment section. We might be doing a part 2 of this. I know it was a really cool conversation, so I am so grateful to hear your wisdom and insight on this topic. I think it's something that needs to be shouted from the rooftops. So
thank you. I agree. I am so happy to have the opportunity to just talk about this publicly and to encourage people to just think about death, and it will reflect back to you. Like when you put the energy into that space, it will come back to you, and it makes it very clear about what matters today. And so I hope everyone does something today that makes them feel just a little bit more alive.
Ooh, can we put that in the comments? What's one thing you want to do today? Feel alive. Do you have anything, Melissa? Like off the top of your head? Let me put you on the spot.
Oh, sure. No. Sometimes I do not take the time to like eat or drink, and I'm rushing through it. And something that I'm actually just generally am trying to be more mindful of is stopping and just really enjoying it and like being with it in that moment. So I today am going to, in a minute, I'm going to go make a cup of coffee because I haven't had one yet. I've only had tea, and I want 1 cup of coffee. It's going to be the perfect cup of coffee with cream and sugar. Oh, and I'm going to sit and enjoy it and then go about my day. So that's what I'm doing today.
I love it. I am going to go for a walk today and not bring a device with me. No cell phone. Yes. Just be present and observe and just be with myself. So that's my intention for today.
Yeah, I love it. Wow.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And I'm sure we will be chatting soon. Thank you, everybody who is watching or watch the replay. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.